It's a really good idea in this sort of question to create a little table. We've got P, Q, R, S, and T, and then I'm going to make some assumptions about whether they're telling the truth or not. So I decided to go with the female statements. First of all, let's say that, because let's just make an assumption that Miss Q is telling the truth. So let's say she is. Now that would mean that Miss S is also telling the truth, which would mean that exactly one statement made by a man is true, which would mean that three were telling the truth. We just got to check that actually everything is consistent. So Mr. T would have to be lying. So I'm going to say false because we know now with our, well, via our assumption that both of the women are actually telling the truth. And then what Mr. P says of the five statements, an odd number is true. So we that means that because if Mr. R was telling the truth, then Mr. P would have to be lying. But Mr. R says Mr. P's statement is true. So it must be that Mr. P is telling the truth and Mr. R is lying. So that is one possible scenario where I started with Q being T, true, and that gave us 3. So I'll just write that down. Okay, now let's go with Miss Q actually lying. That's our starting assumption. So she says both statements made by women are true, so she's lying. Now, Miss S could still be telling the truth in theory, so let's just roll with that. She then says exactly one statement made by a man is true. Now, if that is the case, Mr. P would have to be lying because actually we'd have to only have 2 statements true. Mr. T says neither statement made by a woman is true, but we know that's not the case because Miss S is telling the truth. Then Mr. R says that Mr. P's statement is true, but it's not. So actually I've got a contradiction in this case. That one could not have been possible, which means we only got one more scenario to look at if Miss Q is lying and Miss S is lying. So now Mr. T must be telling the truth. And also, we know that it can't be that only one statement by a man was true. But we could have Mr. P, see, because if Mr. P is lying, then Mr. R would have to be telling the truth to have it such an even number of statements was true. But we know that can't be the case because if whatever Mr. R is saying, if Mr. R is telling the truth, then Mr. P must be as well. So what I'm going with here is that they both have to be telling the truth in this scenario. And we get a different case, but again, 3 of the statements are simultaneously true. And that's it. That's the only one to have to look at. I've focused on Q. I've looked at true, and then S had to be true. And then I've looked at false, and then S true or S false. And for the second one, we just saw it couldn't work out. The third one, it does work out, but in all of the cases, 3 of the statements are true. Nice.